The story begins in a small fishing town on the coast of Africa. The sea is the lifeline of the people. Every sunrise, fishermen return with their wooden boats filled with the day's catch. The air smells of salt and smoke as women prepare fires to roast or dry fish. Children run barefoot through the sandy streets, shouting and laughing, while elders sit under palm trees, watching the busy life of the market. In the center of the town lies the Great Fish Market. It is always crowded and noisy. Sellers beat drums or clap loudly to call customers to their stalls. Women with bright African headscarves balance baskets of fish on their heads. Buyers argue, laugh, and bargain for a fair price. Fish is more than food here, it is part of culture. It is served at weddings, shared during festivals, and offered to ancestors in rituals. For generations, the people trusted the market. Families believed the sellers were honest. Mothers prepared spicy stews with the fish, fathers grilled it over open fires, and children ate happily. The market fed everyone, rich and poor alike. But then, small signs began to appear. Some fish looked strange, too shiny, too stiff, or with a smell that was not from the ocean. Some customers whispered that the taste of the stew had changed. Others noticed that after eating fish, their stomachs felt uneasy. Still, no one dared to question the sellers. In Africa, fish sellers hold power. Without them, the town cannot eat. The market, full of laughter and trust, hides a dark secret. Beneath the colorful stalls, among the cries of sellers and the songs of buyers, something dangerous waits. The town does not know it yet, but the food they trust most is slowly becoming their greatest enemy. As weeks passed, more people in the town began to notice strange things about the fish being sold. In the busy African market, where drums beat and voices echoed, not all fish looked natural anymore. Some had unusual shapes, others gave off a sour smell even though they were supposed to be fresh from the ocean. An old woman named Mama Nandi, who had cooked fish stews her whole life, was the first to complain. She told her neighbors, "This fish does not taste like the sea. It tastes of something dead." Her words spread like whispers through the market, but the sellers laughed and told her she was too old to know the difference. A fisherman named Kwame also grew suspicious. One evening, when he returned from the ocean with his boat, he noticed that the sellers already had piles of fish waiting. How can they have so much before we even arrive? He wondered. He tried to ask questions, but the sellers ignored him. Families began to fall sick. Children complained of stomach pain after eating fish. Some elders developed strange fevers that no herbs could cure. Still, people were afraid to speak against the sellers. In many African towns, sellers and traders are respected and feared at the same time. If someone accused them wrongly, they could be cursed or banished from the market. Whispers continued to grow. Some said the sellers were bringing fish from the dirty rivers instead of the sea. Others believed they were mixing fish with animals that did not belong in the market. A few even whispered that dark magic might be involved. But nobody dared to confront the sellers directly. Their voices were loud, their money strong, and their power dangerous. The suspicion grew like a shadow over the town. The market was still full of color and noise, but behind every smile, there was doubt. The people had begun to fear the very food they loved most. One night, a brave young man named Jabari decided to follow the fish sellers in secret. He had heard too many whispers, and his own little sister had fallen sick after eating fish stew. The cries of his sister gave him courage. When the moon rose over the African coast, Jabari hid behind the palm trees near the market. What he saw shocked him. The sellers were not waiting for fishermen to bring fresh catch. Instead, they went toward the muddy river that ran behind the village. This river was feared by many. It carried dead animals, waste, and dark water that smelled of rot. Jabari watched as the sellers pulled out strange things from the river. Some were dead goats, some were rotten fish, and some were creatures he could not even name. With sharp knives, they cut the animals and shaped the flesh to look like fish. Then, they covered the meat with scales taken from real fish. To hide the smell, they poured chemicals and rubbed strong spices on it. Jabari's heart pounded. "This is poison," he whispered to himself. He wanted to shout, but he knew if they caught him, his life would be in danger. The sellers were not just greedy, they were powerful men with influence in the town. He followed them back to the market. There, under the light of oil lamps, the fake fish was mixed with the real ones. By morning, mothers and fathers would buy them, not knowing the death hidden in their baskets. Jabari realized the truth was darker than anyone imagined. This was not just about greed. It was betrayal. The sellers were poisoning their own people, selling death in the name of food. That night, as the drums of the market echoed in the distance, Jabari swore he would find a way to expose them. The next weeks were filled with fear and sickness. The once joyful African town, full of music and laughter, grew silent. After eating fish, more families fell ill. Children cried at night with stomach pain, women grew weak, and even the strongest men could not escape. The market, once the heart of the town, became a place of danger. Every morning the sellers shouted loudly, their voices covering the truth. "Fresh fish! Straight from the sea!" they cried, while their baskets hid death inside. The smell of rotten flesh was masked with pepper and herbs, but careful noses could still sense something wrong. Mama Nandi, the old woman, lost her grandson after he ate the stew. She wailed through the streets, warning everyone, "This is not fish. These sellers bring sickness to our homes." But the sellers laughed at her pain. They told the people she was mad with grief. Jabari, who had seen the truth with his own eyes, felt fire burning inside him. He wanted to tell the town, but fear held him back. The sellers were dangerous men, some rumored to use charms and dark magic for protection. Whoever stood against them risked disappearing in the night. The horror grew each day. Graves began to fill. The healer of the village, a wise old man named Elder Okoro, tried to cure the sick, but even his strongest herbs could not fight the poison spreading through the people's bodies. He told Jabari, "This sickness is not natural. It comes from the food we eat. If nothing is done, our people will die." The market was still alive with drums, colors, and voices, but behind it was silence, silence in homes where laughter had turned into mourning. The town was trapped between hunger and fear. To eat meant sickness. To refuse meant starvation. The sellers were winning, and the people were dying. Jabari could no longer remain silent. Every day he saw mothers crying over sick children, and he knew the truth hidden behind the sellers' baskets. Fear still lived in his heart, but his love for his people was stronger. One night, under the dim glow of the moon, Jabari made a decision. He would gather proof. He followed the sellers again, hiding in the shadows of the palm trees. This time, he carried a small drum camera given to him by a traveler who once passed through the town. From behind the bushes, he recorded everything: the sellers pulling dead goats from the dirty river, cutting them into pieces, and rubbing them with fish scales. He captured their cruel laughter, their chants, and even the chemicals they poured to hide the stench. The next morning, Jabari went to Elder Okoro, the healer. He showed him the evidence. The old man's face grew pale as he watched. "This is evil," he whispered. "You must be careful, Jabari. These men will kill to protect their trade. But the truth must reach the people." Together, they called Mama Nandi and a few trusted villagers. When they saw the proof, anger rose in their hearts like fire. "Our children are dying while these men grow rich," Mama Nandi cried. The small group agreed to act. They would gather the town under the great baobab tree, where meetings were always held, and reveal the truth. Jabari's hands trembled at the thought, but he knew there was no turning back. For the first time, the seller's power would be challenged. The people would finally see what their fresh fish truly was. Jabari stood tall that night. He was no longer just a young man. He had become the voice of his people, the one willing to risk everything for the truth. The sun was high in the sky when the people gathered under the ancient baobab tree. It was the place where all important matters were decided in the town. Men, women, and children stood together, their faces filled with fear and curiosity. The fish sellers also came, laughing loudly, sure that no one could ever challenge their power. Then Jabari stepped forward, his heart pounding like a drum. He held up the small camera and said, "My people, today I will show you the truth that hides in the shadows." The crowd grew silent. Elder Okoro stood beside him for strength. Slowly, Jabari played the recording. The people gasped as they saw the fish sellers pulling dead goats from the dirty river, cutting their flesh and disguising it as fish. Mothers covered their mouths, children cried, and men shouted in anger. The sellers tried to stop the recording. They shouted lies. "This is a trick." But the truth was too clear. The proof could not be denied. The town turned against them. The village chief ordered the guards to seize the sellers. That night, the market was raided. Hidden under the stalls, the guards found rotten animals, bones, and bottles of chemicals. Everything Jabari had said was true. The punishment was swift. The sellers were dragged through the streets as the people threw ashes and sand at them. "You fed us death," the crowd shouted. "You poisoned our children." Some of the sellers were locked away, while others were banished from the town, never to return. Their power was broken, and their names became a curse. The market, once filled with their voices, now stood quiet for a while. It was as if the earth itself had breathed a sigh of relief. The town had finally defeated the greedy men who betrayed their own people. But though the sellers were gone, a deep scar remained in the hearts of the people. Trust had been broken, and the lesson would never be forgotten. After the punishment of the sellers, the town began to heal. The market reopened, but this time it was different. Guards now checked every basket of fish before it could be sold. No one was allowed to bring food from the dirty river again. The chief made strict rules. Only fishermen who came from the sea could sell their catch, and every fish had to be inspected before reaching the people. At first, the people were afraid. Mothers looked closely at every fish they bought, smelling and touching it with suspicion. Some families even stopped eating fish for many weeks. The memory of sickness and death was too fresh in their hearts. But slowly, with time, trust began to return, this time with open eyes. Jabari became a hero in the town. Children followed him with respect, and elders blessed him wherever he walked. Mama Nandi called him the protector of our stomachs, and Elder Okoro praised his courage, saying, "One honest man can save an entire people." But Jabari always reminded them of the lesson: do not trust blindly. Not every smile is honest. Not everything that looks fresh is safe. His words spread beyond his town to neighboring villages. People became more careful in the markets, checking not only fish but all food before buying. The great baobab tree, where the truth had been revealed, became a place of remembrance. Every year, the town gathered there to tell the story of how greed almost destroyed them and how courage saved them. The market returned to its rhythm of drums, bargaining, and laughter, but the people never forgot. They learned that hunger can make people blind, but wisdom can protect lives. And so the story ends with a warning for all: beware of fish sellers, for not every fish that glitters comes from the sea.